Now, I'll be the first to say that I don't like the direction the series took, starting with Shadow's game. That was the start of support characters being pushed from gameplay and eventually being pushed from the game's storylines entirely. Not to mention, in this game, some of the characters become one-dimensional to make way for the super cool, super awesome new character Blaze, oh my god, which is not good writing, honestly. You can introduce new characters while keeping old characters just as fleshed out and three-dimensional as they always have been. There's never a need to push other characters flat to show off a new character. Doing that is just lazy and dumb. So here we go, Sonic Rush. Cream appears right after Blaze runs around looking for her soul emeralds, and the cute little rabbit is discovered by the princess. Right, so there's a noticeable difference in Cream's characterization here. Remember all of the traits and qualities displayed in all the other games? Well, now we are presented with a more simplistic Cream, who the writers are trying way too dang hard to appear cute. I mean, look at this meeting and compare it to our first meeting with Sonic in Advance 2, or maybe Emerald in Sonic Battle. What's the difference between the Advance 2 and Battle meetings and this one? Doesn't it seem more heavy-handed than the previous two? Yeah, I'd say so. This is what happens when a writer doesn't understand what makes a character work. For example, in Advance 3, Cream's introduction is cute and hilarious, with the most minimal and subtle effort put into it. That's good writing for a cute little girl character. This is obviously way less subtle than previous games, which is why Cream comes off as more annoying and dumb than anything else. Anyway, one good thing this encounter does is highlight the strengths and weaknesses of Cream's kind and trusting naivety. Something that before now has only very slightly been seen in a negative way in the previous games. And while I do like that her being naive is viewed as both negative and positive, I don't like the bluntness of this viewing. I mean, Blaze literally tells the audience, she should be more cautious. Like, wow, thanks, writers. I couldn't have derived that on my own. Thanks for spoon-feeding me that concept. The other thing this scene does is shake Blaze initially by Cream's innocence and genuine kindness. Blaze isn't used to this, and I'm glad she's shown to be awkward and uncomfortable with people treating her like this. A big part of Blaze's backstory baggage is the fact that her powers have caused her to be ridiculed and isolated from people. Thus, she isn't socially adept like a princess her age should be. It's a funny moment, but it hints at something a bit deeper and somber in her character, and I love that. I just wish there was more subtlety like this for the rest of the characters. If only. Cream invites Blaze to her home in a very blunt and direct way, opposite of the mature subtlety that she displayed in Battle, and sort of forces Blaze to come along with her. I'm glad Vanilla makes another appearance here, because it's always cool for her and Cream to both be featured in a game together. because there are no other mother-daughter relationships in this series at all. So anytime I get some vanilla and cream time is great. So I'll just play that scene. This is funny and kind of cute, seeing as Cream now has someone completely serious to bounce off of. There's an interesting dynamic going on here. But again, the heavy-handedness of Cream being naive and Vanilla being naive is a little off-putting. Still, it's humanizing this new stoic character a little, while connecting her to familiar protagonists. And really, nice, quiet moments like these are few and far between in this series. So it's sort of refreshing to have characters just sit down and have some tea, talk about their day a bit, relax. Also, the word friend is being thrown around haphazardly by Cream, but Blaze is stunned by it. And considering her issues with connecting with people, it's understandable that using the word friend so carelessly to label her is a stumbling block. While Cream, who hasn't experienced isolation and loneliness, isn't bothered by calling people she just met her friends. That's a nice subtle touch, even though it's meant to be heavy-handed. Straight man and funny character in an awkward situation. That was what they were going for. This is where a question that I've had about Vanilla and Cream's relationship is answered. Sort of. Whether Vanilla knows about Cream's exploits or not, which she does, sort of, I wish they had taken this idea further. But LOL, nope, Blaze is only important character now because she's super special and new. The way Blaze immediately shoots down the idea of help is also a major part of her character. She's been alone all of her life and she's never had to depend on anyone before, so she doesn't want to start now. Plus, she's unlike Cream in that she can trust people she just met. In fact, I don't think it's a stretch to say that Blaze currently doesn't trust anyone. She doesn't even trust Cream and Vanilla, as she initially turns down Cream's offer to be her guide. She only allows Cream to help her because 1, Cream is not strong enough to pose a threat to her. 2, she is in fact lost and having a guide would be helpful on her mission. And 3, Cream is persistent about it and Blaze doesn't exactly want to hurt a child's feelings in front of their mother. So she says have it your way with an uninterested stare on her face, which doesn't curb Cream's enthusiasm at all. In fact, it heightens it. I also like that here Blaze is being forced to let Cream in little by little until she starts to care for her. Again, Blaze is given subtlety and it works quite well, while other characters suffer from obvious bluntness. Plus, Sonic being a household name for the rabbits is nice, showing that they haven't forgotten what he's done for them personally and the planet as a whole. It may not seem like much, but few characters actually stop to consider and thank Sonic for what he's doing. Another nice touch is Blaze's inner frustration with the rabbits, but her inability to actually leave or take her frustrations out on them. Their niceness is too much for her abrasiveness, and I love that this becomes a regular theme for Blaze in this story. Next, Blaze goes to a stage and encounters Robotnik again, but this time, Cream is on the sidelines. and this is another really good, delicate way to show just how much Cream has changed, and why these changes matter for this story. Before her transformation in battle, Cream couldn't stand violence at all. She hated it. She hated that her friends did it all the time. She hated that she had been forced to participate in violent acts. There was no enjoyment she could find in combat. And during the entire events of Advance 2, Heroes, and Battle, she isn't even cheering her friends on when they fight. She's not encouraging when it comes to them fighting, whether it's to save her loved ones or not. Cream completely rejected and hated fighting. But now, she's cheering Blaze on in this boss fight, and man is that a welcome change. She's come so far from wanting nothing to do with fighting, being thrown into physical confrontations, and trying her best not to fight more than what's absolutely necessary, hating herself for being in those violent situations and avoiding them altogether, being presented with a thinly veiled excuse to fight with Amy for exercising reasons, then being selfish and rejecting fighting and getting Emerald hurt, then realizing the error of her ways and fighting only to protect the ones she cares for, and finally finding at least some happiness or maybe even pride in someone using violence for the right reasons. It's a beautiful addition to her character arc, and though most people are too busy focusing on the boss fight, Cream cheering for Blaze took up all of my attention. Not only does this show Cream's changes and development, it's a clear reason as to why Blaze can be so smitten, if you will, with Cream. Remember, Blaze is a loner not by choice but by fate. She doesn't have friends because of her powers, and she has already resigned herself to this lonely fate. It's just the way her life works. So whenever she fought, whenever she did anything, there was no one to validate her. There was no one she could look back at and see cheering for her. There was no one who could express happiness in her success, worry and support in her hardships, and there was no one to express pride in her. Now suddenly, she's fighting like usual, and there's this bold new addition to the battle, a supporter watching her and wishing for her to win. That's gotta be a big deal for her. In fact, it reminds me of this scene from The Boy and the Beast, or Bakemono no Ko, if you're a purist, which is the most amazing movie I've ever seen, and you should go watch it right now. 誰もあいつを応援してない。あいつ一人ぼっちなんだ。まだやる気か。ミニ夏までやるぜ。もうやめとけ。なんだまだまだ。Okay, so this is obviously way more emotional and intense than Cream cheering Blaze on during this boss fight. but the idea is the same. This new feeling of someone wishing for her to succeed is strange but welcomed, albeit she restrains herself from acting like Kumatetsu does in this clip. But continuing on with Rush's plot, Cream and Blaze are looking around for soul emeralds, and the symptoms of bad writing are really starting to surface here. Okay, the whole problem with this part is Cream has gone from flat-ish to flatter. Are you kidding me with this scattered brain stuff? The whole idea of Cream making someone else feel like a babysitter is probably the simplest mistake someone would make for when they write her. Hasn't she proven over and over again that she is probably more mature than older Sonic characters? Why was it necessary to dumb her down like this? She's the smartest one out of Team Rose, which isn't saying a whole lot, but still, she's smarter than Amy and Big, who are supposed to be at least semi-competent characters. Well, one of them is supposed to be a semi-competent character. And hasn't she proven that she can take care of herself despite her childish nature? She wasn't in need of a sitter in Heroes or Advance 3, or even Battle, really. Yet here she is, causing Blaze to say, "Duh, I feel like a babysitter. What a baby this baby is, baby, duh," cause she's 6 years old. Yeah, I don't like this, and it's about to get even worse when Knuckles comes in. This is my biggest problem with the writing. For the newer games, they've essentially turned all characters into one-dimensional shadows of their former selves. The thing with Knuckles and Cream not being very bright is a straight-up lie, and a sign that the writers didn't know what they were doing with most of the characters. So let me clear this up for everybody. Okay? Stupid and ignorant are not synonymous. I repeat, stupid and ignorant are not the same thing. Ignorant means you don't know about a particular subject. It means you are inexperienced when it comes to certain things. If you don't know how to read, you're illiterate, not stupid. If you haven't been to school, you're uneducated, not stupid. Stupid means you're an imbecile and a moron, and you're basically incapable of being intelligent in any way, shape, or form. Allow me to further explain. And this is not me bragging, by the way. I have slept through almost every math class in my entire school career. That includes Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry. Math is something that comes naturally for me, along with liberal arts and some science courses. I just said Sonic courses. Oh god. Okay. I've never gotten lower than a C in any class except for a few, high school history and geography classes. However, I don't know anything about the ways of the Philippine people, or rocket science, or foreign cuisine. Does this make me stupid or ignorant? If you picked ignorant, you are officially smarter than the Sonic's Rush Riders. Everyone in the world is ignorant of something. No one knows all things, but everyone is not stupid. A rocket scientist could be ignorant to the ways of picking up chicks. A lawyer could be ignorant of the culinary arts. A doctor could be ignorant of the mechanics of sailing a ship. None of them are stupid, they're ignorant. They don't have expertise or experience in certain things, but that doesn't make them unintelligent. Get it? So the problem is the writers don't understand this difference. And to be fair, it's hard at first to make the distinction between ignorance in a character and stupidity in a character. But if you know how to write, this shouldn't be a problem, because it's your job to know exactly what words mean. Because you're a writer, words are your thing. I'm getting upset and off topic. The point is, Cream is oblivious and naive and inexperienced in many things of the world. She's 6, this isn't a surprise. Knuckles is gullible, naive, and socially inept. That makes sense, he's lived alone on a floating island all his life. However, does gullible and oblivious equal stupid? No, of course not. It means gullible and oblivious. Knuckles isn't stupid, and neither is Cream. In fact, she's very intelligent and insightful for her age. And Knuckles, well, could an idiot do this? Nope, I don't think so. If you gave both of them an IQ test, I'm pretty certain their IQs would be right where they need to be for their respective ages. It's their lack of life experience and other flaws that make them do stupid things. But that doesn't make them stupid people. Tony Stark is the smartest man on the planet, but his ego and scientific curiosity leads to making Ultron a crazy killer robot that ends up trying to destroy the world. He ends up making this critical mistake that he wouldn't have made if he hadn't let his flaws take him in a certain direction. Tony Stark isn't stupid, but he can do stupid things. There's the difference. So taking all of this understanding, let's apply it to this new direction the writers have taken for Knuckles and now Cream. Knuckles is dumb. He says dumb things because he's a moron, lol. Cream is a little kid, and little kids are dumb, lol 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 lol. Like, are you guys stupid? What is this, man? Gullible, trusting, and naive are not the same as simply stupid. But here's what we're getting from the writers in this game, and it's frustrating to see a mismanage of good, solid characters. However, as I've said before, Cream's naivety being seen in a negative light is good, and I give them some credit for that. But come on, don't make them just stupid. That cheapens them and the story. Anyway, moving on. Knuckles, after getting up in arms about Blaze potentially having a Chaos Emerald, even though you can clearly see it's an entirely different cut of gem from the Chaos Emeralds, but Knuckles is dumb now. Oh. He tells her to just give them to Sonic, and that's where I have to pause and walk a few paces. Knuckles saying that is just... No, I'm leaving it there. This is a Cream video, we're talking about Cream, but I just want to say that this is out of character for him. It's so out of character I feel like throwing up. I'm not going to do that, I'm just going to continue. So the question is, Cream, why are you looking for Sonic randomly? When was it decided that Sonic is what you were looking for instead of the Soul Emeralds? When was that discussed? This comes out of nowhere, and Blaze correctly points out that she's doing fine on her own, which she totally is. What's the point in getting Sonic right now? She's just got the 4th Soul Emerald and she's not hurt or in trouble at all. In fact, she's got Robotnik on the run. Why is this necessary? To shove the importance of friendship, which has been done to death, down my throat? I think it's that. It's definitely that. Color me unimpressed. Anyway. So first off, Cream doesn't respond to Blaze telling her they're doing fine on their own, which they are, and then Amy comes in and is an annoying fangirl, one-dimensional shadow of her true self. And Blaze says exactly what I'm thinking. Oh, goody, another Sonic groupie. Even though this is Amy Rose we're talking about, the name Sonic has been thrown around constantly throughout these cutscenes. And it's just a shadow of things to come. Eventually, all of these characters get benched and transformed into Sonic cheerleaders. Nothing more, nothing less. God, it's sad. Then we're treated to a poor attempt at Amy Rose and Cream comedy, and that Cream calls Amy short-sighted and Amy chases her with her hammer. That thing she always does to literally everyone ever. What an unexpected and surprising twist. That is also original. I'm literally dead on the inside. So then Amy is left wondering who Blaze is, giving an awkward end to that earlier joke. She was just chasing after Cream. Did they both just randomly stop and walk back to Blaze to continue the conversation? That's strange. Again, what is even happening with the characters right now? Blaze says she's looking for the Soul Emeralds, and says she had absolutely no interest in finding Sonic, something she's been saying for the entire game. And Amy says, I'm his girlfriend, I won't let anyone have him. And Blaze, her subtlety goes out the window as she tells us point blank, I am a little sad because Amy is open about her feelings. That is something I cannot do because of my tragic backstory. Isn't that profound and genuinely sad? And layered for my character? Isn't it? Isn't it? And I'm just like, where did her chill go? why did we need to know this? We already see that she's reserved and stoic. We don't need her to slap us across the face with it. Just keep her silent during Amy's fangirl spiel, and we'll understand this exactly without it being handed to us. Amy mentions Tails, and Cream decides to tell Blaze / the audience who Tails is. The reason I said / the audience is because Blaze literally has no reaction to the information about Tails. She doesn't even acknowledge that she heard Cream, and I'm left wondering why that is in there at all. It does nothing. It isn't important. It doesn't show us anything about any of these characters, so why is it there? Is it for Blaze or the audience? I think it's for the audience. And that's just retarded to do. Why would you stop the entire story to explain who a character we already know is? That's one of the dumbest things I ever saw in a plot. And no, I'm not mistaking dumb for ignorant. I mean, that's literally stupid and dumb for a writer to do. Amy says her sonic senses are tingling, and she runs off, and the scene continues as this. That was weird. I mean, that was stupid writing and weird writing all at once. That was... Ugh. First off, Blaze asks, "What was that?" What do you mean, what was that? She ran off to find Sonic like she said she was going to the entire time she's been talking to you. What kind of question is that? Then Cream tells Blaze they need to catch up with Amy, and Blaze's reaction match mine. Like, what? Why? For what? She's going to find Sonic. Someone Blaze has repeatedly said she does not wish to meet, so why would she do the one thing she has constantly been saying she doesn't want to do, instead of resuming her all too important mission to retrieve the Soul Emeralds so that, I don't know, the worlds can stop trying to kill each other? So Cream's explanation is Amy has Sonic radar, and Blaze is like, how is that funny? How do you find that funny? That annoying chick can sense the presence of her obsession. Good for her, scary for him. Now how about them Soul Emeralds? That should have been her reaction. That's what her character has been this whole time. But now she's smirking at that? Why? How much sense does that actually make? Then Cream says it's the first time she smiled since they met, and Blaze is like, what? And I'm like, yeah, this is the reason you crack a grin? It doesn't even make sense. This whole sequence is just nonsensical, and then they go after Amy for some reason, and another stage starts. Like, wait, did any of that make sense? Like, Cream is suddenly looking for Sonic for no reason whatsoever. Blaze tells her they don't need Sonic, which they don't. Amy comes out of nowhere, spouts random fangirl nonsense, and Blaze is like, who the fuck? Amy also asks Blaze if she's trying to find Sonic, to which she says for the 100th time, no, she doesn't want to see Sonic. Then Amy continues her Sonic obsession, and Blaze takes a moment to feed the audience information, because apparently we're too stupid to figure it out on our own. And then Cream explains who Tails is to Blaze / the audience, because how could we possibly know who that is? And it's so vital to the plot that we know who Tails is, because he does so much for the plot. It's crazy how vital he is to the story. They should have called it Tails' Rush instead, because he's just that important to the entire game. Then Amy's Sonic stalker senses tingle. Cream tells Blaze they should follow her because no reason, just do it. And Blaze smirks for no reason. And then, OMG, you smiled. Now let's get to the next board. The end, by Sonic Rush writers / 5-year-olds. Like, wow, does any of this make sense? Because I promise you, I don't believe for a second that it does. For God's sakes, it's like an infant wrote this. I'm gonna try and focus back on Cream, because I I'm getting stuck in the writing and the plot. And honestly, this is a video for another day. So I apologize. Let's focus back on her. So Cream is happy to see Sonic and Tails, but their reaction to Blaze has her seriously confused. She's been with Blaze all day and she hasn't done anything bad. Sonic, Tails, and Blaze argue before she leaves, and Cream decides to stick with Blaze over Sonic and Tails. Kind of interesting, considering she has known them longer, knows them better, and they like her more than Blaze likes her. I guess she stayed with Blaze because of that one persistent quality of hers. She's willing to do anything for someone she deems a friend. Since she has met Blaze and called her friend, she needs to help her. Tails and Sonic seem to be fine on their own, but Cream wasn't about to abandon Blaze at this dire time. So it makes sense, actually, and is in character for her. Kudos to you 5-year-old Sonic Rush writers. Now let's see how they mess things up right after. Remember how insightful and surprisingly wise she was in battle? When Emerald asked her if getting thin was good, she correctly answered it in another way other than yes or no. She said it is something that Amy wants to do so that Sonic can love her. She didn't say it was a good or bad thing, because it's not about good or bad. Getting thin is a subjective thing. There is no blanket, yes it is good, or no it is bad answer. That was insightful, wise, and sly as far as being written into the story. Now compare that to this. What kind of person is Sonic? Duh, he liked the wind, duh. Then there's this look on Blaze's face that can only be described as, "Aw, you little idiot, it's so cute how you can't help me understand anything at all." And I'm like, wow, where's the people reading Cream who knows the desires and motivations of other people and uses that to explain what they are doing and why they're doing it and who they are? What happened to her? She was awesome. But alas, we get he's like the wind, and then it's another stage. Now, I understand that Sonic is like the wind, and that is an accurate description, but the real Cream wouldn't have just said that and let the person remain confused. If you ask Sonic Battle Cream what kind of person Sonic is, she would describe his confidence, his reliability, his strength of character, his good nature, his sense of adventure, his desire to keep moving forward, yet never leave anyone behind. And then she would bring in he's like the wind. He's like the wind is such a broad and simple statement that anyone could get almost anything from it. He's a hobo nomad because he's like the wind. He's fleeting and rushes by without leaving an impression because he's like the wind. He makes a lot of noise but doesn't have a real presence because he's like the wind. He's cool on a summer's day because he's like the wind. He's the source of all tornadoes because he's like the wind. It's too simplistic. That's not really profound or accurate. If she nailed it down with a sentence, one sentence, or two max about what he has in common with the wind, then that would be perfect. The point has gotten across, and now Blaze can smile, not because it's cute how stupid Cream is, but her admiration for Sonic and the words she uses to describe him make her feel a little of what Cream feels for Sonic. This can be Cream's empathy and sympathy powers showcased without beating the viewer over the head with it. And now we have a more layered Cream the Rabbit. But no! Let's mishandle the crap out of this game with incompetent writers, yay! Moving forward, Amy meets up with Cream and Blaze, and after a sort of unnecessary ham-fisted friendship speech from Amy, Cream tells Amy she agrees and says one of the cheesiest things of cringe ever. This is basically the most cringy line in this game, and whether you believe it or not, Cream is the only one who could say this and not make everyone remotely paying attention to the dialogue want to flip a table and quit the game. Now, I'm not delusional. Sonic the Hedgehog is full of cheesy, cringy, and corny lines in like every single game with lines. However, it takes a special character to say this line and not make everyone want to give up on the rest of the game's plot. If Sonic was to say this line, I'm not gonna lie, I would have left the game right there and never picked it back up. Because it's just so bad. It's so bad. It's like Dora the Explorer level of cringy and stupid asinine writing for literal toddlers. But if the line just had to be said, I'm glad Cream was the one to say it, because she is a toddler. Therefore, it's easier to forgive her for this, or forget about it altogether. At least for me it is. This might not be the case for other people. And by the way, that's a false statement. Big is Cream's friend, but there are a lot of characters that don't really like him for obvious reasons. So just because you are friends with two people doesn't mean they are always going to be friends to each other. And frankly, I would love to see this idea challenged in the future. Cream has already had her beliefs challenged, and her development from that challenge has made her into a stronger, better character. So yeah, it would be interesting to see this proven wrong or tested in some way. But as for the rest of her dialogue, she's clearly showcasing her sympathetic powers again, and evidence is in Blaze's mental response to Cream's words. That can't be true, but it doesn't feel wrong. Logically speaking, Blaze is correct. That statement is not true at all. But why then doesn't it feel wrong? It's because Cream has the social ability to share her feelings with others, allowing them to adopt the feelings as their own. This isn't a superpower per se, it's similar to Vector's deductive abilities. This is just something she's naturally an expert in, feelings and emotions. Not only understanding others' emotions, but getting others to understand her emotions. And that is a powerful skill she can and has used more than once in the series. And it's one of the many reasons I think she's an awesome character. Then Knuckles shows up and Amy tells Cream and Blaze to get out of there. And this is when we get this actual comedic-ish scene. Blaze being afraid of heights and Cream being a flyer is a nice comedic touch. It wasn't a knee slapper, but it didn't make me want to facepalm either, which is saying something for this game. Then, as they're in the air flying away, Cream, being the selfless girl she is, assures her that Knuckles is actually nice when you get to know him, to which Blaze smiles for the third time in the entire game and thanks her, much to her surprise. But the interesting part is that Cream says it's fine because they're friends, right? And Blaze doesn't answer, which lets us know that Blaze still has some growing up to do, which she does in the Sonic boss battle. And the best part of this exchange is that Cream does what Emerald did to her in the Gimme Shelter. She changes the subject and shifts the focus to keep Blaze from feeling obligated to answer that question. Blaze, still experiencing Cream's positive emotions and internalizing them for herself, but inexperienced and uncomfortable with opening herself up, doesn't have to push herself to admit she now has a friend, after a lifetime of keeping people at arm's length, and never truly trusting anyone else, which is something she needed for her character arc. She needs to make up in her own mind to trust people, not for Cream to push her into saying she trusts her, which she could do, but decides not to. This is handled nicely, and I like its place in the story, because when Blaze finally calls Cream her friend, it's much more satisfying, than if she would have said it right now. Then Cream roots for Blaze during her fight with Sonic, which is out of character for her and opposite of her earlier statement of cringe. A friend is still a friend. Well, Cream, your two friends are beating the crap out of each other. That's not exactly a friendly thing to do, is it? I feel like it would have made better sense if Cream was absent from the boss battle this time around, or if she had different phrases to say, like, guys, please stop fighting, or you don't have to do this, Mr. Sonic, Blaze, or even, you're both my friends, I can't let you hurt each other. Something more in line with Cream's character, like, it shouldn't have been that hard to change the subtitles of her little word bubble, right? This part with Cream cheering for Blaze is just so weird for me, especially with the Team Sonic incident as a catalyst for her entire development. But haha, who cares? She gets kidnapped for the third time. She was able to free herself from Robotnik last time with Emerald's help, of course, and I'm pretty sure it would have been more in character to have her at least attempt to escape from Robotnik on her own, but no. The plot calls for Blaze to have to rescue Cream, which, I get it, it's supposed to be her big character development moment, but still, Cream would have been able to free herself, in my opinion. She's already proven herself to be powerful enough to defeat powerful, enemies and stuff. But whatever. Blaze beats the boss and we get this pretty cute moment for the two. This works pretty well for me. Blaze frantically looking for Cream, but her falling from the sky to hug her is so symbolic. No, really, think about it. Blaze is alone in burning rubble, looking for someone who isn't there. Where else has Blaze been alone and stuff? How about her home dimension? The burning rubble represents her powers and her duties to defeat all who dare harm the Soul Emeralds. She's shifting through this burning rubble. Why? Because she's looking for something, someone. People that bury themselves in their work, that don't have friends, do that because they're hoping to find some fulfillment in that job that they can't get from anyone else because they don't have anyone in their lives. But really, that's what Blaze wants. She wants to be with others. She wants friends. She wants to trust people. But she's buried those feelings under her powers and her duty, the burning rubble. Then she looks up and Cream falls right out of the sky. The sky represents Sonic's dimension, ergo Cream's dimension. And Blaze, first of all taking her eyes from the ground, her dimension represents her coming to this new world, shifting her perspective. And when she moves to a different world, Cream is right there waiting for her, just like the moment they met. Falling out of the sky like an angel, which, let's face it, Cream is one of the few characters closest to being an angel in this series. And even when they embrace and Cream thanks Blaze for saving her, Blaze can't bring herself to really say what she needs to say. So Cream helps her to say what she's wanted to for so long. We're friends. This in itself sums up their entire journey in the game. Blaze struggling to admit to someone, to trusting someone for the first time, caring for someone for the first time, and Cream just helping her to understand that it's okay to take a chance and trust someone to be your friend. But Cream doesn't make her say it, she just helps Blaze to find the courage in herself to admit this. And she does finally, and her story ends on this lovely moment. It's beautiful, it's symbolic, and it's touching, and this is why Sonic Rush is worth mentioning, even though it got so many things wrong, because dang it got this part right. Then in the finale, Blaze has to go back home, and Sonic tells her that she now has the ability to come back whenever she wants, which means when he gets back to his world and finds Cream lamenting Blaze's departure, he most likely tells her that Blaze will come back and see her real soon. And that's it for Sonic Rush. Her next appearance is in Sonic Chronicles, but that game is considered to not be canon and take place in an alternate dimension, and the time of the events is not set up, so I'm just not going to touch that. And then she appears in Free Riders, which is literally the worst game ever. And there essentially was no plot, no interesting or even correct character interactions, so really it's like Shadow the Hedgehog in that there's no way I can use the information it gives to add or take away anything from this analysis. It's just there, unfortunately. Then there's Sonic Colors, where she shows up for 5 seconds as a one-dimensional shadow of herself, even worse than the Rush mistakes, and names a Chow Milk, and then she leaves. So can't use that either. Then her final appearance is in Sonic Generations, where everyone is now firmly one-dimensional cheerleaders for Sonic, and that's all for her game appearances. So we're done.